What if your most deeply held beliefs are wrong? And worse, what if you already know they might be wrong, but still can't let them go? We like to imagine we love the truth, that we are rational seekers who update our minds when presented with evidence. But in reality, the human brain often treats truth like an unwelcome guest, tolerated when convenient, ignored when uncomfortable. Psychologists call it belief perseverance. Even when a belief is disproven, most people keep it, not because the facts aren't clear, but because certainty is comforting and doubt is exhausting. Certainty feels like standing on solid ground. Doubt feels like floating in deep water with no shore in sight. History is filled with examples: leaders who refused to believe the storm was coming, scientists who ignored contradictory results, entire societies that clung to myths because the truth was too disruptive to bear. And in our personal lives, we often do the same, defending outdated ideas, rationalizing mistakes, and shutting out alternative perspectives. This isn't because we're stupid, it's because our brains evolved to prefer stability over accuracy. And in a dangerous, unpredictable world, the comfort of certainty has always been a survival tool, even if it's built on illusions. Today, we'll explore why we cling to wrong ideas, how this instinct shapes our reality, and what it takes to escape the seductive grip of false certainty. Chapter 1: The Warm Blanket of Certainty. Imagine waking up tomorrow in a world where every single thing you believed could be wrong. Not just a few details here and there, but the fundamental truths you've built your life on. Your moral compass, your political views, your sense of who to trust, even your understanding of cause and effect. For most of us, that's not just unsettling, it's terrifying. And it's because certainty is one of the brain's deepest cravings. From the moment we're born, our survival depends on our ability to predict the world. Babies quickly learn patterns, crying gets attention, certain faces bring comfort, certain tones of voice mean safety. These early consistencies form the first bricks in the wall of certainty we spend our lives building. Certainty tells us this is the way things are, and in doing so, it calms the part of the brain wired for survival. When we are certain, we can conserve mental energy. We can focus on action rather than doubt. In evolutionary terms, uncertainty was costly. Hesitation could mean missing a meal or becoming one. But in the modern world, that instinct to cling to the known has a dark side. We no longer face the immediate life or death threats of our ancestors. Instead, we face a far more abstract danger: misinformation, partial truths, and outdated beliefs that feel right because they feel familiar. Psychologists have found that when confronted with contradictory evidence, the brain's reasoning centers don't always spring into action. Instead, emotional centers light up, as if defending a belief we're defending ourselves. To admit we're wrong feels like a small death, a crack in our identity. So we wrap ourselves tighter in the blanket of certainty, even when it smothers us from reality. This is why conspiracy theories survive long after they've been debunked, why outdated scientific models cling to textbooks, why nations cling to failed policies for decades. Certainty is more comfortable than accuracy, and comfort often wins. But the question we must face is this: if the blanket is warm, but it's also on fire, how do we convince ourselves to let it go? Chapter 2: Why the Brain Hates Doubt. If certainty is a warm blanket, then doubt is a cold wine that finds every gap in your defenses. It doesn't just make you uncomfortable, it hurts, and neuroscience shows us why. When you're faced with uncertainty, your brain treats it as a threat. The amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and emotional processing, lights up like an alarm. Your body responds with stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, and your attention narrows to hunt for resolution. This isn't just a metaphor. In functional MRI scans, uncertainty activates the same regions as physical pain. That's why I don't know can feel unbearable. The mind wants to close the gap, to land on any conclusion, even a wrong one, just to make the discomfort stop. Psychologists call this ambiguity aversion, the tendency to avoid situations where the outcome is unknown. It's why gamblers would rather place a bet with a bad chance than wait for unknown odds, why investors cling to failing stocks, and why voters prefer politicians who offer confident lies over ones who admit complexity. In experiments, participants were shown two jars of colored marbles, one with known odds 50 red, 50 blue, and one with unknown odds. Even when the unknown jar might have had better chances, most people chose the known jar. Certainty feels safer than possibility. even when possibility offers a better outcome. This bias seeps into every domain of life. In science, it slows the acceptance of new theories. In medicine, it leads to overdiagnosis and overtreatment. In relationships, it fuels assumptions instead of conversations. The irony is that this ancient survival mechanism, designed to protect us, now keeps us trapped in intellectual cages. Our brains evolved to prefer a predictable wrong over an unpredictable right. But if we want to grow, we must first learn to sit in that cold wind, to let doubt sting without rushing for the nearest warm lie. Chapter 3: The Illusion of Evidence. We like to believe that our convictions are anchored in evidence, that our beliefs rest on a foundation of objective facts. But here's the uncomfortable truth. For most of us, evidence often means information that supports what I already think. Cognitive scientists call this confirmation bias, and it's one of the most powerful forces shaping human thought. Instead of approaching information like impartial judges, we behave like lawyers defending a client, our client being our worldview. We select evidence that strengthens our case and ignore anything that might weaken it. Even worse, once a piece of evidence becomes tied to our belief, it can become immune to disproof. This is the backfire effect. When confronted with contradictory evidence, we often double down on our original belief rather than revise it. Our minds twist logic into knots to explain away the discomfort, inventing reasons why the disconfirming data doesn't count, isn't credible, or doesn't apply to our situation. History is littered with such moments. When Galileo presented proof of a heliocentric solar system, many scholars dismissed his observations because they contradicted scripture. When early germ theory was proposed, doctors clung to their old models, refusing to wash their hands even as infection rates soared. When climate scientists present overwhelming data today, entire segments of society reject it because it conflicts with their identity, politics, or economic interests. The problem isn't just ignorance, it's the seductive feeling of being right. That feeling can be so intoxicating that even flimsy evidence becomes a fortress. And once we're inside, the fortress doesn't protect truth, it protects us from truth. This is why debates on social media rarely change minds. People aren't engaging in an exchange of facts. They're engaging in an exchange of justifications. Each side presents evidence, but most of it is selectively harvested to confirm what they already believed. To break free from the illusion of evidence, we must first admit that our minds are not naturally truth-seeking machines. They are comfort-seeking machines, and facts are just another tool for maintaining comfort. Chapter 3: The Illusion of Evidence. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. Every second, billions of data points are at our fingertips: historical archives, scientific studies, eyewitness accounts, expert analyses. So why do so many of us, when faced with all this knowledge, still cling to beliefs that crumble under scrutiny? The answer is not that we lack evidence. The answer is that we often don't want evidence, we want validation. This is the essence of confirmation bias, the brain's built-in filter that favors anything supporting what we already believe, while quietly discarding the rest. And it's not a flaw reserved for the uneducated or the stubborn. It's a universal feature of human cognition. Even the most brilliant scientists are vulnerable to it. The difference is that good science builds systems to counteract it, while everyday thinking does not. Think about how you browse the internet. You click the articles that resonate with your view. You follow voices that agree with you. You avoid sources that make you uncomfortable. And when you do stumble across contradictory evidence, it's almost reflex to question its credibility. Who funded this? What's their agenda? This reflex intensifies in matters tied to identity. If a piece of evidence challenges not just an opinion, but who we are, it feels like an attack. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning. Our reasoning isn't guided by truth-seeking, but by the desire to protect our self-concept. History overflows with tragic examples. Galileo's telescope didn't just reveal Jupiter's moons, it threatened the church's authority. The problem wasn't the data, it was the institution's need to protect its worldview. Ignaz Semmelweis, who discovered that hand-washing reduced deaths in maternity wards, was ridiculed by doctors who refused to believe their own unwashed hands could be killing patients. Cognitive dissonance during wars has led entire nations to justify atrocities, because admitting the truth would mean admitting moral failure on a colossal scale. In modern life, this manifests in subtler but equally dangerous ways. A CEO ignores market data because it contradicts their gut instinct about a product. A patient refuses a medical treatment because it conflicts with their beliefs about health. A political supporter dismisses scandals as media bias because accepting them would fracture their loyalty. Even worse, once a belief has been publicly declared, we become invested in defending it. To change our mind would feel like losing face, admitting defeat. This is where the backfire effect comes in. Disconfirming evidence doesn't weaken our stance, it can make us dig in deeper, fortifying our mental fortress against the very facts that could set us free. This is the illusion of evidence in its purest form, the belief that our convictions are built on facts, when in reality, the facts we accept are selected because they align with our convictions. Our fortress feels strong, but the walls are made of paper carefully chosen to match our taste. Escaping this illusion requires an almost painful humility, the willingness to admit that the very evidence we hold dear might be a mirror, reflecting back not the truth, but the image of ourselves we want to see. Chapter 4: Certainty as Identity. At first glance, our beliefs may seem like clothes, things we choose, wear for a while, and replace when they no longer fit. But in reality, many of our beliefs are more like skin, woven so tightly into who we are that peeling them away feels like losing a part of ourselves. This is why changing a deeply held belief isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's an existential crisis. When someone challenges our worldview, they're not just questioning an opinion, they're questioning us. Psychologists call this identity protective cognition, the tendency to reject information that threatens the group or identity we belong to. This is why political debates feel so personal, why religious disputes become so emotional, and why even casual disagreements about morality or values can escalate into hostility. It's not about the data, it's about belonging. From an evolutionary standpoint, the logic is simple. In ancient tribes, survival depended on cohesion. Questioning the group's core beliefs could mean exile, and exile often meant death. That instinct still lives in us today. Even in a hyper-connected world, being cast out, socially, professionally, or ideologically, triggers the same deep fear. This explains why people will go to extraordinary lengths to defend falsehoods that define their identity. A devout follower may ignore overwhelming evidence against a religious claim, because accepting it could shatter their spiritual anchor. A political partisan may dismiss credible reports against their leader, because to accept them would feel like betraying their side. A scientist might resist a paradigm shift because their life's work was built on the old model. Neurological studies back this up. When people hear evidence against beliefs tied to their identity, the brain's reasoning centers often go quiet, while emotional and defensive regions flare with activity. It's not that we can't reason, it's that we don't want to asterisk, not if it means dismantling part of who we are. The result is that our sense of self becomes a fortress, and the more our identity is tied to a belief, the stronger and more impenetrable that fortress becomes. The tragedy: a fortress keeps dangers out, but it also keeps truth out. Breaking free requires more than facts, it requires emotional safety. People rarely abandon core beliefs unless they feel they can survive, even thrive, without them. That's why persuasion isn't just about presenting evidence. It's about offering an alternative identity that is equally, if not more, fulfilling. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore why this is so difficult, and why many people would rather live with a comfortable lie than face the terrifying freedom of uncertainty. Chapter 5: The Seduction of Simple Stories. Human beings are not wired to think in statistics, probabilities, or systems. We are wired to think in stories. Before writing, before numbers, before science, there were stories told around the fire. These stories gave meaning to events, bound communities together, and taught survival lessons in ways that the human brain could easily remember. But the very thing that makes stories so powerful is also what makes them dangerous. They simplify reality. Why stories outshine complexity: a story has characters, conflict, and resolution. It makes sense, it has a moral. Complex reality, on the other hand, is messy, uncertain, and often morally ambiguous. When given the choice between an uncomfortable truth with no clear ending and a satisfying story with a hero, a villain, and a conclusion, our brains overwhelmingly choose the story. Psychologists call this the narrative bias, the tendency to interpret the world through structured, cause and effect tales, even when reality doesn't actually work that way. The comfort of a clear villain: certainty thrives when it has someone to blame. That's why so many simple stories feature a single cause for all problems. The economy is failing because of them. Your illness is caused by this one factor. History went wrong because of that one decision. In truth, most outcomes are the result of countless interwoven causes: economic, political, cultural, personal, but such complexity doesn't fit neatly into a 2-minute news segment or a social media post. Historical examples of simplification. During the Black Death, frightened populations didn't want to hear about unseen microbes. They wanted a villain they could see. Many blamed minority groups, leading to persecution and massacres. In the early 20th century, totalitarian regimes rose to power by crafting grand narratives that reduced all societal woes to the machinations of a single group or ideology. In the modern era, conspiracy theories flourish online because they offer a coherent plot in a chaotic world. A few powerful actors secretly controlling everything. Why we keep falling for it? The brain is a pattern-seeking machine. We crave order. Stories give us that order in a way that raw facts never can. In uncertain times, the pull of a simple story becomes even stronger. This is what makes populist slogans, viral memes, and moral outrage so effective. They offer instant clarity in an age drowning in information. The double-edged sword of storytelling. Storytelling isn't inherently bad. In fact, it's one of our most essential tools for communication, education, and cultural continuity. The danger comes when we start mistaking the map for the territory, when we confuse the simplified narrative for the full, messy, nuanced reality it's trying to represent. A compelling story can make us act, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. It can inspire scientific breakthroughs or fuel destructive wars. It can help us empathize with strangers or turn us against them. Escaping the seduction. To resist the pull of oversimplified stories, we must train ourselves to be comfortable with complexity. This means asking, what's missing from this story? Looking for multiple causes rather than a single culprit. Accepting that sometimes problems don't have neat endings, and that's okay. Because reality is rarely a fairy tale, and clinging to one can blind us to truths that could set us free. Chapter 6: How Doubt Feels Like Danger. We tend to think of doubt as an intellectual state, a neutral pause in which we weigh our options, consider evidence, and arrive at a reasoned conclusion. But for the human brain, doubt is far from neutral. It feels like a threat. The evolutionary roots of doubt avoidance. For most of human history, hesitation could kill you. If you weren't sure whether that rustling in the bushes was a predator or the wind, and you stopped to weigh the odds, you might not live long enough to finish your calculation. Our ancestors survived by developing quick, decisive reactions. The cost of being wrong was often less than the cost of doing nothing. This survival wiring still influences us today, even in situations where our lives aren't at stake. When uncertainty creeps in, our bodies and brains treat it as a form of danger, releasing stress hormones, raising our heart rate, and priming us for fight or flight. The physiology of doubt. Neurological studies show that when we experience uncertainty, the amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes highly active. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational decision-making, often takes a backseat. This means that the more threatened we feel by doubt, the less able we are to think clearly, which ironically makes us cling harder to the false certainties we already hold. Why we avoid doubt in everyday life. In relationships, people may stay in unhealthy situations because the certainty of the familiar feels safer than the unknown of leaving. In careers, many stick to unfulfilling jobs because doubting their chosen path would mean facing the anxiety of reinvention. In politics, voters may reject new evidence because it could upend the certainty of their moral or ideological worldview. The social amplification of certainty. In the modern world, doubt doesn't just make us uncomfortable, it can make us vulnerable to social attack. In debates on social media and in politics, showing uncertainty is often framed as weakness. Leaders are rewarded for projecting unwavering confidence, even when their confidence is misplaced. As a result, we are culturally conditioned to hide our doubts, to replace "I'm not sure" with a confident-sounding answer, whether or not it's accurate. The psychological cost of doubt suppression. Avoiding doubt may protect our ego in the short term, but over time, it narrows our worldview. We stop asking hard questions. We surround ourselves with people and media that confirm what we already believe. And eventually, we mistake the comfort of certainty for truth itself. learning to sit with uncertainty. If doubt feels like danger, we must teach ourselves that it isn't. That means recognizing doubt as a natural, healthy signal that invites exploration. Building tolerance for unanswered questions without rushing to fill the gap with comforting falsehoods. Surrounding ourselves with communities that see uncertainty not as weakness, but as wisdom in progress. Because while certainty may feel safe, it's often an illusion, and doubt, uncomfortable as it is, can be the first step toward genuine understanding. Chapter 7: When Facts Fail to Change Minds. It's one of the most frustrating experiences you can have. You present someone with clear, verifiable evidence that contradicts their belief, and they simply don't budge. Sometimes they even double down. From the outside, it looks irrational. After all, isn't the whole point of a fact that it's true, regardless of what we believe? But human psychology doesn't treat facts as neutral data points. It treats them as social and emotional events. The backfire effect. Psychologists have documented a phenomenon known as the backfire effect. When people are confronted with information that challenges a deeply held belief, they may actually become more convinced that their original belief is correct. Why? Because facts don't just interact with our reasoning. They interact with our identity, tribal loyalty, and sense of safety. Challenging a core belief feels like an attack, and the natural response to attack is defense, not reflection. Facts versus frames. Information never exists in a vacuum. It comes wrapped in a frame, a context, a tone, a set of associations. If a fact arrives in a frame that threatens your worldview, you're more likely to reject it than to examine it. Example: if someone distrusts the media, citing a mainstream news outlet as your source will trigger suspicion before they even process the content. If someone sees climate change as a political issue rather than a scientific one, presenting them with more climate data won't help unless it's reframed in a context they trust. Cognitive dissonance and emotional costs. Accepting a fact that contradicts your belief doesn't just change what you know, it changes what you must now do. If you accept that a diet you followed for years is unhealthy, you have to confront the harm you might have caused yourself. If you admit that a politician you supported is corrupt, you have to reconcile the feeling of having been deceived. This emotional cost makes it easier, psychologically, to reject the fact than to face the consequences of accepting it. Social risk over truth. Humans evolved in small, interdependent groups. Being socially wrong, and therefore isolated, could be more dangerous than being factually wrong. If your community rejects a fact, agreeing with it can put your belonging at risk, and belonging often outweighs accuracy. Why the just the facts approach fails. If facts alone changed minds, misinformation would disappear as soon as the truth was revealed. Instead, facts often bounce off the armor of our identities, and in some cases, strengthen the very beliefs they were meant to weaken. How to present facts that have a chance. Establish trust before presenting evidence. People must feel safe with you before they feel safe with your facts. Acknowledge emotions. Recognize the fear, shame, or loyalty that may make a fact hard to accept. Reframe without attacking. Show how the fact can fit into or slightly adjust their worldview, rather than demolish it entirely. Invite, don't impose. Curiosity grows in an open space, not under pressure. Changing minds is rarely about dumping information. It's about understanding that facts are only as powerful as the emotional and social context in which they're delivered. And until we master that context, the truth will continue to lose to the comfort of a well-defended belief. Chapter 8: How Echo Chambers Reinforce Wrong Ideas. If you've ever clicked on a video about a conspiracy theory just to see what it says, you may have noticed what happens next. Your feed starts filling with more videos like it. Soon, your online world is saturated with variations of the same message, making it feel not only familiar, but overwhelmingly true. This is the power of the echo chamber. What is an echo chamber? An echo chamber is an environment, physical or digital, where you mostly hear your own beliefs reflected back to you. It can form in social media feeds curated by algorithms, news sources catering to specific ideologies, friend groups, families, or communities with shared worldviews, online forums dedicated to a single topic or belief. Inside an echo chamber, information flows in one direction, reinforcing the existing narrative, while filtering out or discrediting dissent. The role of algorithms, platforms like YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter are designed to keep you engaged, and they've learned that the easiest way to do that is to give you more of what you already agree with. This creates a feedback loop. You watch or click on something. The system shows you similar content. You interact more. The system learns that this is what you want. Dissenting perspectives become almost invisible in your feed. Why echo chambers feel so safe? Certainty loves company. When everyone around you agrees, it validates your beliefs and shields you from the discomfort of doubt. Being surrounded by agreement feels like being surrounded by truth, even if that truth is an illusion. And because humans evolved to seek social belonging, the echo chamber also provides emotional comfort. You're not just right, you're part of the right people. The dangers of closed information loops. Radicalization. Ideas can grow more extreme without pushback. Distorted reality. You start to think everyone believes as you do. Immunity to correction. Contradictory information is either unseen or instantly dismissed as biased or false. Historical and modern examples. Religious sects. Leaders control the flow of information, isolating followers from external viewpoints. Political factions. Partisan media ensures each side sees the other as dangerously wrong. Conspiracy communities online. Platforms amplify its theories until they feel mainstream within the group, breaking the chamber without shattering trust. Deliberately diversify sources. Follow voices you disagree with, but choose credible ones. Ask what would change my mind. This opens space for genuine consideration. Build tolerance for discomfort. If a fact or viewpoint stings, sit with it before rejecting it. An echo chamber isn't just a prison of thought, it's a warm, familiar home built to your exact specifications. That's why escaping it feels like exile. But if the comfort of certainty is keeping you inside, you may never see the reality beyond its walls. Chapter 9. The Social Rewards of Being Certain. We often assume that the goal of conversation, debate, and public discourse is to find the truth. But in reality, the social world rewards something else entirely: confidence. Why confidence outshines accuracy. In groups, certainty acts like a magnet. People naturally gravitate toward those who sound sure of themselves, even when that certainty is misplaced. From the boardroom to the dinner table, the person who speaks with unwavering conviction is often seen as the leader, regardless of whether they're right. This bias toward confidence is rooted in evolution. In small tribes, a decisive leader who believed in their course of action could rally the group quickly in a crisis. Hesitation, even when more informed, looked like weakness. The charisma of certainty. Psychologists call this the confidence heuristic, the mental shortcut that assumes confidence equals competence. It's why charismatic public speakers, charismatic influencers, and charismatic politicians can gain enormous followings even when their claims are shaky at best. Status and the certainty game. Certainty can be a status signal. In competitive environments, academic debates, corporate meetings, online forums, confidently staking a position can earn respect, likes, and social capital. Even being loudly wrong can sometimes raise your profile, because visibility itself is a form of power. When wrong feels right socially. In many social contexts, being factually wrong carries fewer immediate consequences than being seen as uncertain. In politics, a bold false statement can rally your base, while a cautious, factually nuanced one might make you look weak. In media, pundits who speak with absolute conviction often get more airtime than those who express complexity. On social media, a confident hot take is more shareable than a carefully balanced perspective. The problem with public doubt: when someone changes their mind publicly, even for good reasons, it can be framed as flip-flopping or indecisiveness. This social penalty for intellectual humility means people often hide doubt to protect their reputation. How social rewards reinforce false certainty. Applause and validation. Being certain earns quick approval. Influence and authority. People defer to confident voices. Tribal bonding. Certainty strengthens group identity by showing commitment. Counteracting the reward loop. If we want truth to have a chance, we must start rewarding the process of thinking, not just the confidence of the conclusion. That means publicly valuing intellectual humility. Encouraging leaders to explain uncertainty rather than hide it. Normalizing phrases like "I don't know yet" or "I could be wrong." In a world that confuses confidence with competence, it's no wonder we cling to wrong ideas. They can make us look stronger, smarter, and more trustworthy than the messy truth ever could. Chapter 10. Breaking the habit of false certainty. Letting go of false certainty isn't just an intellectual exercise, it's an emotional and behavioral transformation. You're not simply replacing a wrong idea with a right one. You're rewiring how you relate to truth, doubt, and discomfort. Step 1. Cultivate intellectual humility. The first shift is to recognize that you are not your beliefs. When your identity is fused with your opinions, any challenge to them feels like a personal attack. Humility means accepting that your current view is just one version of reality, a work in progress, not a final verdict. Practice. Keep a beliefs I've changed list to remind yourself that growth often means revising what you once thought was certain. Step 2. Seek disconfirming evidence. Train yourself to actively look for information that challenges your current position. This is uncomfortable, but it's the antidote to echo chambers. When you feel resistance to a source, ask, what if there's a piece of truth here I don't want to see? Step 3. Slow down your conclusions. We live in a culture that rewards instant takes. Resist the pressure to form an opinion immediately. Give yourself time to investigate, reflect, and refine before declaring a position. Step 4. Reward doubt publicly. In conversations, acknowledge when you're uncertain. If someone presents a good point, say so. This models intellectual courage and gives others permission to do the same. Step 5. Change your information diet. Consume a mix of perspectives, not to agree with them all, but to understand them. Diversifying inputs helps dismantle the illusion that everyone sees the world as you do. Step 6. Build a community of inquiry. Surround yourself with people who value the process of truth-seeking over the performance of certainty. These are the people who will challenge you constructively and help you stay honest. Step 7. Accept the emotional cost of truth. Every time you shed a false certainty, you also shed a bit of comfort. You may lose the feeling of control, the warmth of belonging, or the pride of being right. But in its place, you gain something more durable: resilience, adaptability, and the freedom to keep learning. Final reflection. The comfort of certainty is a powerful sedative. It soothes our fears, organizes our world, and makes us feel in control. But in exchange, it often asks us to give up the restless, demanding, and profoundly human work of seeking the truth. Breaking the habit of false certainty means embracing the discomfort of the unknown, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to grow. Truth is not a possession, it's a pursuit. And the pursuit is only possible when we dare to loosen our grip on the wrong ideas we've learned to love.